go. Hey Renu, how are you?
I'm good, Declan. How are you?
I'm good. We're getting well settled into our new studio, I feel.
Yeah. I actually feel like this is the second generation of our podcast.
Yeah, it does feel like it,
and we've
doesn't
just kind of clicked our 100th episode.
Yes, I must say we posted our 100th episode yesterday for those of you who might have seen it, and it was a bit of a special one for us, wasn't it?
That was a very special one. A long time in the making.
Yeah.
And a very meaningful podcast.
Remembering Christchurch was the name of our podcast earlier in the week, and it was a very special, we called it our Magnus Opus. It was really quite a bit of work for the last 6 months, putting together a very special tribute to the memory of the Christchurch earthquake back in 2011, and the reason why that really matters to the urological community in Australia and New Zealand. So if you haven't had a look at it, I think it's very special, and especially on YouTube, it's one to watch on video rather than audio, isn't it?
Absolutely. And it's been 12 years, and watching that brought back a lot of memories.
Yeah, and look, one of the reasons we did it is there was a very special session at the USANS, that's the Urological Society Australia New Zealand annual meeting in February, where we brought back some people who were incredibly involved in the earthquake, and we talked to them about what it meant, and we talked to some people who were victims of the earthquake, and it was we put this podcast all around it. So remembering Christchurch, it's a good
definitely
one,
worth the watch, actually.
But it's it's obviously hundreds of people died and devastation, so we'll be a little bit more lighthearted today.
That's right. And the second generation of the podcast requires a revisit from one of our favorite segments.
Yes, Aoife's
Twitty
back.
Leaks is back.
What did she call herself? Twitty Leaks?
Twitty Leaks. Did you forget?
Yeah, Twitty Leaks.
Twitty Leaks.
Aoife, how are you?
We may have to change that name soon, but Aoife, welcome back.
I'm good. I did demand a better studio, and I'm glad that my demands were met. That's the only reason I wasn't back, you see. So I'm happy now. It's great.
Fantastic. And you're fresh off the plane from a visit to Ireland.
Yes, I was in Ireland and back and forth from England. But fighting the jet lag.
And have you managed to keep up with what's happening on Twitter?
Yeah.
What is it with Twitter these days?
I'm always on Twitter. Yeah. Is it Twitter? Is it X? Do we really know what's going on? My feed changes all the time. It's hard to know. But it's there's been a lot out there that I've been keeping up with in the last few months. So first of all, I suppose what we've seen as usual with Twitter, lots of controversy. So I've seen, they have the strikes in the UK.
Is it still called Twitter? Just for clarification.
I don't know. I was doing some research before this episode to try and figure it out, and I just still hadn't decided. I think Elon has well and truly wreaked havoc since he took it over, or allegedly. I might have to say that on the podcast. But I think Twitter for now we're going to keep up with. Otherwise, I'll have to change my name to X Leaks. So
X Leaks.
We'll see from then. But the last few months was strikes in the UK. I seen there was debates about the ambiguity of professional titles as well, and all sorts of the usual stuff and drama on Twitter. But I think specific to GU though, like you just mentioned, the Christchurch episode of GU Cast really caught my eye this week, and obviously I was there at USANS, so I was in the room when everyone seen the video that you made on the massive screen, and I feel like there was very few dry eyes in the house actually that night. But I think it's definitely that's my top watch.
Highlight.
Yeah. No brides taken for that. So yeah. But other bits and bobs, some serious ones, some less serious ones. But I had seen that David Keynes had posted an interesting tweet, which was...
We will put this up on the video.
Yeah, you should be able to see it there. So I think it's the eternal thing in urology. It's how we describe hematuria. So I think in Australia, we typically go by the red wine scale. So it's either, a Merlot or a Pinot Noir, but this is probably a bit more technical. But it actually came from a 2020 study that was published in Urology Journal, and they sort of got urology healthcare professionals to give their own descriptors based on the colour of washout tubing, and sort of put it in a 5-point scale. And I think what he'd pointed out as well is it can be useful in things like, in particular, EPIC, where you can make dot phrases. So, if you see a patient consult, you can put in a screenshot of this picture for, the nurses and stuff to see, and then sort of as a more objective measure of what it looks like, because, everyone might describe it a little bit differently. So I thought that was a good one. So
Well done. Yeah, David Keynes is a great guy to follow.
Yeah, he is
urologist
good.
at Leahy in the US, and he really is. He's a very innovative guy, and please follow David. We were going to get him on the podcast for our ChatGPT episode, didn't we? We just couldn't get
him on soon.
Maybe now we've plugged him, he'll come on the podcast. We'll see. That was all part of the plan.
What else?
Yeah, and then the other one was I seen Jeremy Teo had posted some of his new research.
That was a good one.
Yeah, I thought this was interesting. So it's just a proof of concept study, and sort of looking at endoscopic guided ultrasound biopsies of the detrusor muscle, and it was done in porcine models. And actually, it sort of looked like the predicted stats were maybe 99% of detrusor muscle was sampled if you do sort of more than 3 biopsies. Again, all sort of tentative stats for that. But I thought it was a really interesting take on, bladder cancer. And I think the hope is that, looking into obviously more with human studies and things would be might expedite biopsies or diagnoses, in some cases. And it is always, sometimes it's not always easy in a TURBT to actually get detrusor. So you might end up going a couple of times. So I think that'll be one to sort of watch what comes out of it in the next few years.
Yeah, Jeremy's always got brilliant ideas like that. So that's a great thing to point out.
Actually, the whole area of imaging of bladder cancer with this push and very nice trial from the UK showing MR may replace the need for a TURBT in selecting patients for radical treatment. I know it's very interesting, so maybe we need to dig into the imaging of bladder cancer, how it's changing management pathways, I suppose. But
yeah, definitely. And then on to sort of the more funny stuff, which is what I do enjoy more, to be honest. But there was a couple of things, both came from Sevan Panuganti. He's a great follow. I'll give him a plug as well. But one I seen going around Twitter was for all specialties. It was like the tagline was "Annoy a urologist with one tweet," so it could be any sort of specialty. There were a few really good ones in this, so you can see it up there. But a lot of them were themed around a phone call you get in the night being like, we placed a 16 French 3-way catheter. You can see him in the morning. Shouldn't be any issues with that. Lots of issues around 16 French 3-ways people are describing. That seems to be one of the best ways to annoy a urologist is to put in a small 3-way catheter. Another theme was one said, sorry to wake you up. I know it's 2 a.m, but I think my patient is having a stroke and need an urgent consult. And then obviously you have to correct them that you're actually a urologist, not the neurologist. So a few other one was, oops, cut the ureter. So, that dreaded, annoying phone call you can get. And then another one was, in a how to annoy urologist is saying, a urologist is a surgeon, right? Those were all really funny, that thread. So excellent. I said I'd recommend to have a little read. And then he also had posted, you'll see here, this got like 8,000 likes, I think, on Twitter and like 2 million views. But it was, please do not check your temperature via your urethra. If you do, don't shove it in so far it goes into your bladder and you forget about it for 15 years. And that is a temperature probe in someone's urethra.
15 years later.
15 years. So very interesting. Even more than 8,000 now. So lots of stuff going on. The serious, the less serious. It's all good fun on Twitter.
And no Kardashians this week, Aoife?
Well, you hadn't had the opportunity to ask me yet, Declan. There has been some drama in the pop culture world, which I think you did quote say, along with horoscopes, was melting my brain. I think you said last time. So, but no, Kylie Jenner was recently spotted out with her ex-best friend Jordan Woods after controversy with her sister from a couple of years ago. So that's the latest drama. I know we've got lots of pop culture fans.
Have you gotten your dose of the
horoscope things is funny as people. So Aoife assists me in a huge number of robotic prostatectomies. So I spend hours and hours with her every week doing surgery. And apart from the Kardashians, horoscopes are the other thing. We haven't really gone into it on the podcast, but just get her talking about horoscopes. Don't let Neptune rise over the. Can you just give us a few?
Yeah. Well, like that sort of skepticism is what a Sagittarius would say. Is all I can say.
Anyway, is that enough for
we probably could go on all episode, but we should move
more
on.
Serious stuff.
We'll have her back again.
Fantastic.
Now that she's back.
Thanks so much, Aoife. That's fantastic. But on to our 2 international guests who've been waiting patiently on the line.
Very exciting,
Yes. Are you excited?
They're wondering what is going on. What is Twitty Leaks?
I know. And they're quite serious people, actually. They've got big jobs. Yep.
They do. We shouldn't keep them waiting.
So, yeah, it's a great privilege to welcome two old friends of mine from Europe to the podcast. We have Professor Morgan Roupret from Paris and Professor Alberto Briganti from San Rafael. Gentlemen, good morning to you. Good evening here in Melbourne.
Hello.
Good morning.
Yeah, good morning.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, great to see you. So, Renu, why have we invited these two urologists?
I mean,
from
not
Europe?
only are they absolute superstars and very good friends of ours, but they've just taken on new roles within European Urology and the journal family, and so we wanted to officially introduce our two new editors-in-chief.
Yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? It's transition time for some of the European urology journals. So, it's a big deal when there's a new editor-in-chief because it only happens every 3 or 4 years. And usually they've got a couple of terms. So it's only every 7 or 8 years the editor-in-chief changes over on these major journals from European Urology, BJOI and so on. So it's in that period, there's a kind of a 6-month period when the ex-editors-in-chief and their teams are handing over the journal. And then I think from the 1st of January, they take over. So, and
not only are these two amazing, but they also have big shoes to fill because they're taking over from really amazing people as well.
That's right. So Alberto Briganti is the new editor-in-chief of European Urology, the biggest journal in all of urology, taking over from Jim Cato after a long, very successful period, who took over from Francesco Montorsi, Alberto's mentor at San Rafael in Milano. And Morgan has taken over as editor-in-chief of European Urology Oncology, part of the European Urology family, where Alberto was the prior, actually the inaugural editor-in-chief.
It has a very family feel about it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I think that's part of it, though. The transition is a challenging time, but at least it's all very familiar. So we've invited Alberto and Morgan on to talk a bit about the transition and what's coming in these big, really important journals for listeners. And also we wanted to dive into impact factors, didn't we?
Yes, I'm surprised that this wasn't featured on Twitter Leaks because it has been big out on Twitter. The new impact factors are out. What does it mean? What is the impact of these numbers?
And for listeners out there who have no idea what an impact factor is, do you want to talk a little bit about what an impact factor is and why it matters to journal editors, Renu?
Yeah, I mean, so impact factors have been around for a long, long time, and it's really a way of evaluating journals and how they quality of journals compared to each other, really. So it's really, an impact factor is a simple equation. So it's looking at how many citations are received in that journal throughout a 2-year period. That's the numerator, divided by how many articles are published in a 2-year period. So it's really how many times does an average article get cited.
Is that why the journals tend to have high reject rates? When we submit a manuscript, these journals have like 80, 90% of the time they just reject it because they don't want to publish all these papers, even though we think they're very interesting. We've done all this research, but they don't want lots of articles because if you have lots of articles, your impact factor will be diluted. And the articles they do accept, they want to say, well, I'm accepting this article because it's high quality and I expect it will be cited over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, we should get these guys to comment on it, but certainly that I'm sure that forms a part of it. And also impact factor has a major influence on people deciding to submit to a certain journal as well. Yeah. So it really works both ways.
Yeah, and so traditionally the results come out mid-year and they're all trying to see, have I gone up? And most of them, I mean, there's a bit of the sea is rising about this and most of the impact factors have been going up. But this year, big shock, because actually a lot of them dropped. So we want to talk about that.
Alberto, what did you leave Morgan with?
Yeah, Alberto. So welcome to the podcast. It's great of you to join us from Milano today.
So thank you very much, guys, for this kind invitation. And I can say one thing, that on behalf I believe, of all EAU journals, and I think to speak also on behalf of Morgan, we have been invited, all of us, to many meetings, but actually being hosted at your fantastic GUcast is an achievement. So we are really, really proud and happy to be with you because you are so famous, you are like real actors and stars in the field of science dissemination, I would say, because this, as we know, is a really important tool that we have nowadays to improve dissemination of research also. So congratulations first, and we are very, very honored to be with you today.
When Alberto says it, you have to believe it.
I know, he's right. Thank you.
If I may add a few words, it is true that I had to wait for a long time to be in the family. And you mentioned, Declan, that every 3-4 years there is a new member, and so I was queuing, I was in line, and now I'm in, so I'm extremely happy. This is true also that the impact factor that we just obtained is in fact the reflect of the work of Alberto's team, because each time we have an impact factor which is released, it's the reflect of the previous, I would say, years of the journal. So we will discuss that for sure. But I believe that even though it's the most recognized measure of success of a scientific journal today, there are other metrics which we need to invest on. And you have the perfect example also of what we should do, because the vision we have of a journal, of a scientific journal, has changed. 10 years ago, we were receiving a printed issue, we were reading it over the plane or in a train and so on. That does not exist anymore. So it's a dynamic process. And outside the release of the issue, it's ongoing, it's alive. And we need to talk about what we release and how we work on the, I would say, scientific dissemination of what we publish, because we believe we have selected good content, but we need to get a wide readership.
I mean, I think they're very wise words. No matter what an impact factor is, like Morgan said, there are various other metrics to really assess the impact of an article on the community, and I think dissemination is a major aspect of it.
Yeah, but come on, the EAU has hired them. The board of the EAU, who are all very hard-ass people, all they care about is the impact factor, isn't it? So it's their number one KPI saying, Briganti, don't mess up the impact factor. Roupret. So we've got the league table in front of us. The top 20, I think, is this urology, nephrology. Have a look, Renu. So take us through the top few. In terms of ranking, because this is what they look at.
Yeah, so these are the top impact factors for journals in urology and nephrology. So European Urology comes in at number 1 at an impact factor of 23.4. This is for 2022.
What was it last year, by the way, Alberto? It was
24.3, so it was about 1 point higher.
Okay, so just a little drop, yeah. Okay.
Nature Reviews Urology came in at number 2, 15.3.
Yeah, little drop again.
And then European Urology Oncology, number 3 at 8.2.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? For a journal that's only a few years old, it's only its second or third impact factor, I think. It's amazing.
Journal of Urology is number 4 at 6.6. And then the other journal in the European Urology family, the European Urology Focus Journal, comes in at number 5 at 5.4.
And that's Christian Gratzky. Is Christian staying on? He's been the inaugural editor-in-chief, but he stays on.
Fantastic. And
yes.
And other...
Christian, as you were saying, sorry to interrupt, Reno, but he will stay as editor-in-chief of European Urology Focus, as Jochen Walz will stay as editor-in-chief of European Urology Open Science.
Because that's the other journal which hasn't got an impact factor yet because it's not mature enough. But maybe next year, Jochen Walz's European Urology Open Science will have an impact factor.
And what about the other big ones? Honourable mention is the International Brazilian Journal of Urology, which got a lot of attention on Twitter as a very new journal, open access, that's achieved an impact factor of 3.7 in a very short time.
What about BJUI?
Yes, let me find that. Number 9, just above the Brazilian Journal at 4.5.
4.5, okay.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, and what about the World Journal of Urology? I think it's not even on...
World Journal of Urology is number 13 at 3.4. Journal of Endourology at 2.7.
Okay, there we go.
The Aging Male at number 20, 2.6. Okay.
So there's a league table. It's important, and they've dropped a bit. So Alberto, can you explain to us why they've dropped? Because they've all been going up recently. So why have the impact factors dropped a bit?
Yes, this is a great question. And I know that in Twitter and other social medias, there has been a lot of attention on the reason why the impact factor dropped a bit. And there are several reasons, but the main reasons that we might consider the most reliable and important ones are mainly the fact that we actually are not seeing any longer the boost of citations related to COVID. Because nowadays the number of publications related to COVID really decreased because of decreased scientific interest towards this topic. after years of really catastrophic events, as we know. And the second main reason is that the way Clarivate has changed impact factor calculation has been done in a way that was kind of predictable. Because in the way the impact factor calculation is done, and Renu was saying correctly, it's like we have a numerator and denominator, so it's a simple equation. And nowadays, the denominator has changed in a way that also early access articles have been included as source citable items. In other words, also open access, early access articles are now included in the denominator. That means that if you have an article accepted but not yet assigned to an issue, that paper will be anyway included in the denominator, even though it will be maybe included in an issue months afterwards, which may happen in some journal. So in a way, as you were saying, Declan, the denominator is the big factor for calculation of impact factors. And if you increase the denominator, then of course impact factors might decrease.
So will this be a temporary thing then? Is it just a correction for this period while they've decided now to count the early access articles, and they're unlikely to get many citations yet, but this is a temporary dropping, and then it's business as usual in future years because that's just going to be part of the normal calculation. So truly in the coming years, if something's moving up or down, it's because it's real, not because of a temporary correction just for this year.
Now, this is a fantastic question. As far as we know, this will stay. And in the previous years, there has been a transition period. But in the previous years, early access articles have been included only in the numerator. That was one of the reasons of the boost of the impact factors of many journals. In other words, the early access articles were used as articles which can get citations included in the numerator, but not yet included in the denominator. So there has been also a boost, as you know, last year. Many journals have so much inflation of the impact factors due to COVID and due to this transition way of calculation of impact factors. So I would say that now we are going back to the real, in a way, not inflated impact factors for many journals.
I think that's a really important point, because what a lot of people don't realize is that numerator can be anything that's cited, letters, editorials, articles, but the denominator can only be peer-reviewed articles. So that like Alberto was saying, that can really influence the impact factor.
That's why all the journals created these short format things like comments and brief correspondence that are like less than 1,000 words and certain number of citations, because they haven't been counting to the denominator, but they count to the numerator if you get a cite on them. So I think all the journals did that. It's suddenly over the last 10 years, everybody introduced a short format thing because it wasn't bumping up the denominator. But have you any comment on that, Morgan?
I think, it's a global phenomenon that we describe. So we have to bear in mind that it does not affect just our journals, but all the journals. So it's just the way it is calculated. And I think that more or less we should consider that the impact factor were stable and that we are starting fresh now with this new way to calculate it. And we will rise again and expand from this year to next year. So I'm not really concerned because it does not affect or impact just our journals.
And
absolutely,
as we discussed earlier, Renu, that's impact factor, and that's probably their number one KPI for the EAU board who appointed these editors-in-chief. But what are your comments, Morgan, on other ways of measuring influence? I remember you and I having conversations 10 years ago when Twitter and all that was starting, and we were starting in the BJUI doing social media, and we had a thing called the clout index or clout.
I don't know how we can translate it really in a concrete manner. But I feel that what we are doing now is actually what we should do with the content of the journal. And I remember when I was young and I was looking at the big data coming from, bladder cancer, prostate cancer. I was going at a big conference and I had the opportunity to be first row to look at the speaker and to be in front of him or to meet him just after the lecture. So I think that we have this opportunity with all the virtual stuff that we are creating together to be a little bit more interactive with our potential readership. And on top of that, we have also the opportunity to attract more people to the journal. We do not come spontaneously because we do not want to forget that most of the urologists, I mean, I don't know how it goes in your country, but in France, Western Europe, by private practice, not always attracted by the last data that are going to be released or the late-breaking abstract from the big conference. So what we want is to reach them. And I have the feeling that all the people are interested in the new way of communication that you are perfectly developing. And if you guys, as urologists as well, you spend so much time doing this, it's not just for fun. It's because you believe that it is a way of communication that has been, I don't know, not seriously considered enough so far. So I think it's the way to go. And you had also a perfect example during the COVID, Declan. I remember at the ASCO GU, and I remember you giving lectures that were extremely sophisticated. And so you demonstrated perfectly that it was possible to be very professional in every aspect of the way we communicate. And this is perfectly the objective of a scientific journal, is to release data, but to get it to a very wide audience. So we want to reach the biggest audience we can do.
See, Declan, I've been telling you, we have to branch out to TikTok.
I was going to ask Aoife that question because we were having this conversation in the operating room last week about TikTok, because I'm reading all this data, but it's so enormous. It's absolutely massive. I looked at it once and I really couldn't understand why it was. But then Aoife was showing me in the operating room. I said, well, what's there for if you type in urology or prostate cancer? And it was just astounding that it wasn't just the content, it was the volume of traffic from some urologists who were just TikToking out basic stuff about, urological conditions. And so Aoife, what's your take on TikTok? So we've just created a TikTok account. We've just prepared some videos, but I don't think I'll be any good at it. We'll need people like you to be good at it. But what's your advice to the editors-in-chief on TikTok for urology to sort of compete or replace Twitter? Because Twitter's been useful because it's a way of engaging. It's a way of keeping up to date with journal articles, but TikTok just looked a bit jokey and dancey and music and all that. But could it really be a useful tool for urologists or editors-in-chief like these folk?
Yeah, I think it could be. As you said, at the moment, the way TikTok is like you described, a little bit jokey. It's the level of that it's aimed at would be sort of more education for patients. So, you've got prostate cancer, like here's 5 things you need to know. But it is a massive platform, like you said. They get some places get hundreds of millions of views on like, a 60-second video. It's very easy to tag things in it. So very searchable, as opposed to, I feel like Twitter's a little bit harder to search terms. So I think there would be room for it to turn a bit more professional like Twitter. Like the way I think about the different social media platforms would be like, for me, Twitter is sort of my, not like work one, but more like professional one. It's how I keep up to date with, different specialists and, the latest research and things, and, all the different threads that you get about the different dramas in the medical world across the whole world. Instagram's a bit more, what your friends and family are up to, and, people you went to high school with, what holiday they went on, last year, and just that sort of stuff. And Facebook, I think, is essentially pretty much gone, especially for millennials and Gen Z, I would say. But TikTok seems like there's a lot of room for it to expand. And it's also very good for using the platform. So for editing videos, creating content, it's good for that. So I don't know, I suppose watch this space, but I think there is room there for it to be a good platform to use.
Yeah.
When we started a few years ago, there was only Twitter for the professional, I would say, and also during the conferences, because it's impossible when you are in a big conferences to be in the main room and then to be at the poster discussion and then to be at the thematic session. So Twitter, it's like ubiquity in the conference. So there is this opportunity to take part to every interesting discussion outside just your topic of excellence. You're interested in cancer. but from time to time, I don't know, you see a patient with a stone and so on. So you can take part simultaneously to every discussion. But outside Twitter, the landscape of social media is changing. Today, I see that many doctors are moving to Instagram because Twitter is very aggressive. Most of the time, the people are reacting, and it's I don't understand why it's so aggressive on Twitter. So people are moving to Instagram when you could do live chat, when you can influence and so on. And I think that every channel should be considered seriously. There is no way 50 years ago you would have discussed with your grandmother and you would ask her to choose between the radio and the TV, or to use and to go to the cinema. So today it's just like this. TikTok, I don't use it as far as I'm concerned, but I consider it as a very serious channel of communication and dissemination, and it's going to engage the young generation. So the residents, all the fresh blood of urology. So we don't want to be apart and far away from these people.
We might need a much more creative name for TikTok, Declan. I've got a friend in Malaysia who's Dr. Malwinder Singh, whose segment on Instagram and TikTok is called The Bald Urologist.
Why? The Bald Urologist?
I mean, he is, very proudly so.
Look, I think it's very interesting. And for these editors-in-chief, because we'll finish up by asking them a little bit about what's going to happen in the next few months. What can we look forward to in European urology? And
well, I mean, these guys are visionaries, right? So they've got a vision for the journals, and we'd love to hear what it is.
So Alberto, tell us a little bit. You're in the transition, so Jim is, the papers coming through are still Jim and his team, but I think from the 1st of January, the banners change and you and your team take over. What do you want to tell us about your team or what you've got planned for the journal?
So one of the biggest vision I had was indeed to ask Declan to be the social media editor of our journal. So I'm very happy that you accepted, because you'll do a fantastic job, and I thank you again for being part of the team. So what I have done so far in this transition period is I try to shape a new team of people dedicated to the journal, and to give different or to increase the activities of science dissemination, as what we were mentioning, and to, in a way, change the way we deliver science towards shortened articles, towards new ways, again, of dissemination, but also novel papers formats, which might be more user-friendly by many of us who really do not have time to read the lengthy paper or very long papers. And we are also investing on, in a way, changing the way we deliver systematic reviews, because sometimes you can derive very useful information, but they are not that much readable in a way that you are kind of killed sometimes by tables, by data, without a real take-home message for users, which at the end of the day is what we want to deliver to readers. So the team we have just formed the new team, which will be in place and is already working, but will be the official team of the journal as of January 1st. And I'm very happy to have many dedicated people around me working to get or to maintain the impacts, whatever it is, of European urology as high as it is today, or maybe to increase it. That would be my dream. But we really need to work hard. And honestly, being editor-in-chief of a journal is a job within a job, right? Because we are all surgeons, we are all physicians, but we dedicate so much time to this project that we actually sometimes have to be very selective in the way we spend our time, especially in the weekends, Christmas time, summertime. There is no vacation for an editor-in-chief, which at the end of the day is also a good thing, in a way that you get so much passionate that you don't want to finish it. Indeed, I decided to move from oncology and apply for the main journal for this main reason.
He sounds like a good boss, Declan.
Well, what about your boss? Because
Morgan, would you like to say anything to follow that up?
The first decision I took, because I was totally jealous of the situation, I went to Renu and I said, look, you have to be in, and this is the only way we should I would say, work on the social media and digital communication. So, of course, Renu is in, and she is becoming the digital media editor of European Urology Oncology. It is also a perfect way to interact between journals, because I think that Alberto, who has been working with European Urology and then developed European Urology Oncology, is perfectly aware of the way that we are a family, but just not a word, but we need to work together. So there will be this necessity to meet on a regular manner, to have a shared vision. We have our own specificities, but to have a shared vision of how we develop within the family, and with the leadership of Alberto, there is no doubt that we will be successful in that way. So it's perfect to see you sitting next to one another, because obviously the cooperation is obviously already working. So what I had in mind, my field is much more restricted. It's not the whole urology brand, it's the oncology spectrum, which can be also broad. I noticed in many urological conferences that we were successful as a European urology family for the guidelines, for the journals, but the big conferences, ASCO, ESMO, are in oncology. So what we need is more oncologists involved in the journal, and the way we build it, if we see all the phase 2, phase 3 trials that are coming to early phases of the natural history of the disease, we want to have PI or co-PI with medical oncologists and urologists. So this is the way I've built the team of the journal. I asked medical oncologists to stay or to step in. For instance, Florence Albiges was there for kidney cancer. She is in, and now she has a supporting editor who is a urologist, Riccardo Campi, for instance. For the prostate cancer, we have a urologist, Guillaume Ploussard, and we have a supporting medical oncologist with Elena Castro. So diversity and a duo, medical oncologist and urologist. And also, we were raised and born as, I would say, specialists of an organ. And it is not the way it is, because cancer is a cell disease. We have so many things to share. So we need to be open-minded to new topics. This is why I've asked Alicia Morgans to step in for taking care of, I would say, patient survivorship, patient-reported outcomes, quality of life, all the things that comes along, I would say, cancer, and which has nothing to do with just the survival and the Kaplan-Meier curves that we are producing in conferences, but the quality of life of the patient who are diagnosed and treated for cancer. So I believe that we will attract and we will hunt also potential new authors that could be attracted to the journal, and we would not be spontaneously submitting the content of their research to our journal. So this is the way to open, I would say, the blurred lines of oncology to other authors or other investigators.
Fantastic.
That's amazing.
What a vision, what a multidisciplinary vision, and strong radiation oncologists, I think, coming on board. I know you haven't released all the names yet, but it's great to hear some of the names and seeing them on Twitter and so on. And I suppose, Alberto, the other thing we wanted to acknowledge before we finish is this very strong back office team led by Kathy Pierce, who's been in the journal for how many years, since Montorsi's time, and Kirsten Marshall. So they're still there, aren't they, overseeing the whole family of journals?
Yes, absolutely. This is incredibly important, and because to actually run such a platform like the one that has been built by the EU within the EU family, as we were saying, you need such dedicated supporting people. And as you know, Kathy Pierce is the pillar of the journals, and I actually have been working with her since she was the managing editor at the Montorsi's time. So I still remember that we went out together to buy the very first computer for the very first office of her in Milan. So I did drive a convertible back then. It was myself and her going to the shop, buying the computer. We installed the computer, the two of us. And the whole story started in Milan with Montorsi, and then, of course, Jim. So I'm very happy that she stayed with Jim. She will stay with us during the next years, I hope. And she is fantastic. And Kirsten is also doing a fantastic job in the field of communication and dissemination. And we will also have another assistant working with me in Milan So there will be 3 of them. So we will create a small team of managing editors for the 4 journals overall.
Well, there you go. What a great little peek
and
into the back end of big journals.
And it's exciting. I think the future of European urology is in safe hands with these 2 fantastic leaders.
It sure is. And I should say, in case you think this is just an exclusive European urology thing, we had invited on another very senior editor-in-chief, but at the last minute, unfortunately.
One of our favourites.
Yes, but we will definitely want to dive into the other journals. And we love all our big journals, and it's really important work, and it's lovely to hear some of the back end. So that's great. That was fun, wasn't it?
That was fun.
Thank you very much, Alberto and Morgan, for joining us today.
Thank you, and we will see you all in Paris for the EAU 24, where we obviously have the opportunity to meet all together and gather the family. So I am so happy that it takes place in Paris. We'll have the Olympics for sure next year, but first of all, we'll have the EAU.
We'll all be there. We'll
be there.
And thank you, Aoife, for joining us as well. Sorry, Alberto, go ahead.
Well, I was saying that the social part of our journals is very important, as you know. So during each EU meetings, we actually have very nice dinners all together. And it's fun. It's really a family journal. And again, just let me thank also Christian Gratzke and Jochen Watz, who could not be here today.
Absolutely.
Because they are also absolutely the leaders of the journals. And I really thank them.
Yeah,
totally agree. Yeah, fantastic. And so we look forward to that. And Aoife, thank you for joining us yet again.
Thank you, Aoife.
It's great fun. I'm glad to be back.
And for educating us on what's happening in all these social media journals. It's been entertaining, but I'm looking forward to seeing what happens with these journals next year as they adopt to, especially TikTok and all that sort of business. And I suppose we'll have to learn a bit about it ourselves.
I think there's going to be some great innovations.
Next time we want the shirt. We want the
polo, yes, merchandise coming your way.
You definitely need that.
Okay, so they want the merch. Let's find some merch for them. Well, maybe now I think we're going to put on podcasts for them. Maybe we'll get some European urology.
Yeah, but it's not like coffee mugs; it's wine glasses.
I hear you. Yeah. Fantastic. Okay, well, that's all we got time for. Thank you very much, and we'll be back again soon with some more episodes. Thanks very much to our guests, and we'll talk to you all again soon. Thank you very much. Ciao.
Thanks a lot.
Au revoir.
Bye. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye bye. Ciao ciao.
Bye bye. À bientôt.